30 unbelievable true wilderness horror stories that haunt your nights and keep you in fear. I never should have opened that door. The moment my fingers brushed against the cold metal, a chill shot through me. It was a normal Saturday, just me and the mountain air, away from the noise of the city. I had come to escape, to enjoy nature's beauty. Little did I know, I was stepping into something much darker. Outside, the trees loomed like prison bars, their shadows stretching ominously as the sun sank below the horizon. The wind whispered through the branches, carrying a scent of damp earth and decay. I shuddered. An unsettling sound echoed, a snap of a branch, a rustle in the underbrush. My heart raced. I'd hiked this trail many times before. The familiar crunch of gravel underfoot felt comforting, but now it unleashed a roller coaster of dread inside me. What if something were watching? I strained to scan the darkening woods, my senses heightened, awareness prickling along my arms. My chest tightened as the sun slipped away, darkness enveloped everything. Shadows danced, flickering just out of sight. I could hear my own breath, heavy and erratic. And then I noticed the faint sound of whispers, soft and sinister. I froze. What were they saying? The words raced through my mind, and I stepped backward, heart hammering, as I tried to catch a glimpse of the unseen. Suddenly, a rustling came from directly behind me. I spun around, eyes darting, searching for a source. Nothing. Just the trees, thick with shadows and secrets. A shiver ran down my spine. I needed to get back, to reach my cabin before the darkness swallowed me whole. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. The sound grew louder, a whispering chorus circling me. I stumbled, the ground uneven beneath my feet. Fear wrapped around me like a vice. Just then, a figure darted past the trees, the briefest shadow, a momentary glimpse. My heart skipped a beat. I wanted to run, but my legs felt like stone. The whispers grew louder, almost mocking. Leave. Get out. They seemed to hiss. I turned, panic flooding my veins as I finally noticed the door behind me. The door I'd opened. Jacob's door. Legend had it that those who entered never returned unchanged. But I'd ignored the warning. The cold metal door had tempted me. Now it felt like a trap. I hesitated, hearing the wind moan through the branches. Was it too late? As I took a step toward the door, it slammed shut on its own. The sound echoed like a gunshot. My breath caught. I couldn't help but scream. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The scream echoed, swallowed by the depth of the forest. Panic enveloped me as the door stood there, a dark sentinel that felt impossibly alive. I raised my trembling hand to push against it, but something icy gripped my wrist. I spun to find only shadows. The whispers intensified, morphing into desperate cries that clawed at my sanity. Help us. Let us out. They begged, weaving through the trees, echoing within my mind. I stumbled back, my heart pounding like a tribal drum. The air thickened, heavy with the scent of mold and rot. I felt drawn to the door again, an unseen force urging me forward, yet an instinct warned me to flee. The whispers morphed into soft laughter, sibilant and cruel, surrounding me, taunting my fear. As I stood there, wild-eyed and shaking, the ground beneath me shifted. I could barely discern the outline of the symbols etched into the doorframe, their meanings shrouded in darkness. They writhed, as though alive, pulsating with an energy that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. Each time I forced myself to look away, the tree shadows flared, teasing me with glimpses of forms shifting in their depths. Unable to endure their torment any longer, I took a step back. But the moment my foot connected with the ground, a tremor rippled through the earth, sending vibrations up my legs and spilling into my gut like a whisper of doom. I staggered, and the world tilted slightly as the laughter grew deafening, merging into a cacophonous shriek. I clapped my hands over my ears, but the sound pierced through, relentless. Then, from the depths of the trees, an unnatural fog unfurled, creeping toward me like a malevolent predator. It slithered across the dirt and grass, curling around my ankles and whispering sweet yet twisted promises: an escape, a yearning fulfilled, a passage into oblivion where fear could not touch me. I felt a tear in my resolve, a temptation so insidious that it shone with luminous allure. I turned back to the door. The trail to the cabin, my safety, receded behind me. The door stood silent, but I could feel the begging spirits' lost souls craving passage, a liberation from their imprisoned wretchedness. They would guide me, I thought, just one step closer and I could uncover the truth they had so desperately desired. Another pulse rippled through the ground, more violent this time, making the trees shudder. An overwhelming sense of threat clawed at me. I felt sweat trickling down my brow, my breath ragged as I took a step forward, the fabric of my jeans snagging against thorns unseen. The whispers plunged deeper into confusion now indistinguishable, a tempest of voices crying from hell itself. No! A voice thundered suddenly above the clamor, a human voice, guttural and desperate. I spun to see a figure emerge from the fog, a bloodied face contorting in pain, each feature grotesquely twisted. My breath hitched in horror as the man stumbled forward, a cracked plea bursting from his mouth. "Don't open the door. You mustn't. You'll be trapped with us." But before I could respond, the darkness swirled again, enveloping the man. He howled a sound filled with such despair it pierced my soul. "They're waiting." The fog consumed him. Silence fell abruptly, like a final breath, as the whispers transformed into unsettling stillness, each shadow now eerily still. The only sound left was a faint tapping, rhythmic and ominous. Something was clawing, gnashing behind the door. There was no turning back now. Dread clutched my heart as I approached the door once again, trembling hand reaching out. The whispers turned into a chant, a unified plea, saturating the air with an unbearable weight. And just as my fingertips brushed the icy metal of the door, it creaked open. The darkness beyond beckoned. A jolt of adrenaline raced through me, but the horror that awaited was unimaginable. Before I could retreat, a breathy laugh echoed against the night, a voice familiar but warped, twisted in agony. "Welcome home." And in that breath, the ground beneath my feet gave way. I was falling, not just into darkness, but into something far more terrifying. The descent was instant and suffocating, every second stretching to eternity as I plummeted into the abyss. The world blurred around me, darkness swallowing light as the air turned sharp and frigid. I gasped, my lungs burning, panic clawing at my insides. A whispering gust accompanied me, echoing secrets of untold horrors that awaited below. As I fell, the echoes morphed into an eerie tune, haunting and melodic, yet twisted with despair. It encircled me like ghostly fingers, grasping at my thoughts. The deeper I fell, the clearer the voices became, a choir of tortured souls lamenting their fates, mourning the choices that led them to this eternal prison. With an unforgiving impact, I landed on a cold, unforgiving stone floor, knocking the breath from my lungs. The darkness around me bore down like a suffocating blanket, and for a moment, I lay still, letting the confusion swirl around like mist. A flicker of light pierced through the haze, a distant flickering candle, illuminating a chamber steeped in decay. Before me stood the door, the same one I had just fled, now sealed and silent. The realization crashed over me like a wave. I was trapped in the heart of whatever horror this place contained. The flickering light drew my gaze, the dance of shadows beckoning. Hesitantly, I pushed myself to my feet, dread lingering in every step. The passage echoed with the soft whisper of movement, a scuttling on the stone that sent shivers racing down my spine. The walls were slick with something I dared not analyze closely, but darkness clung to everything like a shroud. I moved cautiously, my footfalls muffled by an unseen mist that wrapped around me. "Help us," the voice called again, now closer, more urgent. It reverberated through the chamber, a chilling plea that ignited a fire of panic within me. Ahead, the flickering candle grew brighter, revealing a circle of figures seated in an unnatural formation. They were human, yet not. They were hollowed shells, faces twisted in tortured expressions, their mouths contorted in silent screams that resonated through the room. In the center, a mirror lay propped against the wall, tarnished and cracked. I could feel something pulling me towards it, a gravitational force tethering my existence to that glass surface, which shimmered with a life of its own. The figures shifted slightly, their gaze following me with hollow eyes, mouths parting just enough for that syncopated whisper to resurface. "Join us." Dread warred with an inexplicable allure, the mirror promised knowledge, perhaps even escape. I stepped closer, until all that remained between us was a whisper of air. In the depths of the glass, shadows danced, a reflection not of myself but of another time, another place, where the pleas of the damned became my own. "Don't look away," a voice hissed, cutting through the chaos. The command sent ice through my veins. It belonged to the bloodied figure I had seen moments before, now a reflection within the mirror itself. His eyes were wide, frenzied with a terror I had yet to fully comprehend. "You have to fight it. They'll drag you in." But the reflections were already shifting, warping into alluring visions of my fears and desires like a carnival of sins. Each flicker became a horrifying echo, luring me closer to the edge of sanity, threatening to swallow my very essence. I felt the icy grasp of the mirror pulling at me, a promise of power and escape that was far too tempting. "Get off!" the man shouted, but his voice cut off abruptly, replaced by the chorus of the lost. The sound enveloped me, drowning out my panic as I faced the reflection in the mirror, which now glowed with the promise of understanding. The figures around the chamber erupted into chaos, their sorrowful cries morphing into a discordant symphony of madness. Just as I reached out, the surface warped violently, and a hand, cold, gnarled, and skeletal, shot through the mirror, grasping my wrist with an iron grip. I gasped, terror surging through me like wildfire as another set of clawed fingers breached the glass, wrapping around my forearm and pulling, dragging me towards the dark depths beyond. In that moment of desperation, I realized the truth: the mirror was a gateway, and I was on the brink of being consumed. But before I could retreat, the walls began to pulse with a sinister energy, the shadows casting deeper, darker figures that slithered toward me like venomous serpents. In the chaos, the chamber began to warp, bending reality itself. With a final effort, I screamed, "Help!" But the engulfing darkness overpowered my desperation, and the last I saw was the tempest of faces deformed, starving, waiting for their next victim. And then, entrapped within a surge of despair, I was violently yanked forward, pulled screaming into the horrifying embrace of the mirror, as the chamber faded into the abyss behind me. I found myself suspended in silence and unnerving, oppressive stillness that seemed to stretch on indefinitely. I could feel the weight of the darkness all around me, crawling over my skin like a myriad of hungry insects. The world beyond the mirror had transformed into a disorienting landscape, warped and devoid of color. Mist swirled at my feet, twisting into grotesque shapes before evaporating into nothingness. I was no longer alone. The shadows pulsated with malevolent intent, shifting and writhing, weaving a tapestry of despair that reached out towards me as if they were sentient beings. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat echoing the cries of the tormented, making it impossible to discern where I ended and the horror began. I was part of a macabre symphony that played relentlessly in the background, urging me forward. The mirror's surface rippled like water disturbed, revealing fleeting glimpses of anguished faces, their mouths forming silent screams as they clawed at the glass, desperately seeking freedom. Their eyes filled with terror and longing were reflections of my own burgeoning despair, entwined in a tapestry of lives lost to this eternal nightmare. I could feel their desperation like an icy blade carving away at my resolve, driving me deeper into madness. Scarcely believing I had endured such a fate, I turned to assess my surroundings. A gnarled tree loomed above, its branches twisted like skeletal fingers against the dim light. It emerged from the inky earth as if summoned by some profane ritual, roots sprawling across the ground, pulsating in rhythm with the cries of the damned echoing through the vastness. As I inched closer to the ancient trunk, the moaning intensified, resonating in my bones. The very air felt heavy with sorrow, saturating my senses. Suddenly, a figure emerged from behind the tree, a woman, her form shifting in and out of focus like a malfunctioning projector. Her hair hung in matted, dark strands that framed her face, obscuring her features. Yet, I could feel the weight of her gaze piercing through the shadows, locking onto me with unyielding intent. "Help us," she rasped, her voice a soft whisper that dripped like honey laced with poison. "It's not too late. You can still escape." Desperate to rid myself of this stifling reality, I stepped forward. "How? What must I do?" My voice cracked, barely echoing in this desolate realm. She smiled, a horrific curvature of her lips that belied an unspeakable truth. "Embrace the darkness, let it inside. Only then can you sever the ties that bind you to this torment." At that moment, a chilling laugh erupted from the shadows. It reverberated like the sound of breaking glass, shattering any semblance of hope I clung to. The figures in the mist began to coalesce around me, transcending their ghostly forms to reveal the truth. I recognized the faces that warped in the gloom. Friends, family, loved ones I had lost amid tears and grief. They reached for me with grasping hands, their mouths forming inaudible words, their expressions pleading and hollow with anguish. Trapped between the allure of salvative darkness and the suffocating despair of the faces I longed to save, I trembled on the precipice of a decision. The woman stepped closer, her outstretched hand shimmering with a dark light that beckoned. "Join them, you'll find comfort in the void. You will not suffer alone." I staggered back, a tide of confusion flooding my mind. Could this be a trick? A ruse to pull me deeper into the abyss? My instincts screamed to flee, yet I felt myself being drawn towards her, entranced by the haunting beauty of her sorrow. Before I could make a choice, a violent wind gusted through the clearing, carrying with it a cacophony of whispers, cries, and the crackling of something malevolent awakening. The very ground beneath me trembled, the darkness roiled like a living entity, and the figures my loved ones began to writhe in pain, their faces contorting in agony as they sank deeper into shadow. "No! I want to let you take me!" I yelled. But the voices became a deafening storm, drowning my words in a sea of sorrow and fury, mingling my scream with theirs into a single, primal cry for salvation. Suddenly, the earth erupted, and from the fissures sprang forth gnarled tendrils, twisting upward like serpents eager to claim their prey. They lunged for me, brushing against my limbs, cold and unyielding. With vertigo engulfing my senses, I twisted and fled, darting back toward the tree, the last semblance of grounding in this forsaken land. As I sprinted, the landscape morphed again, shifting rapidly around me. Every step I took warped time and space until I stumbled into a clearing where remnants of a decaying carnival flickered like ghost lights. The roots of the tree tangled with discarded attractions, mounds of rusted metal and faded cloth. The omnipresent darkness pulsated here too, yet in this fleeting moment, an old carousel remained intact, its mirror-like surface reflecting my panicked visage as shadows danced in the periphery. Suddenly, the mirror of the carousel tilted, revealing faces twisted with glee clad in caricature-like grins, their laughter mingling with the agonized wails that followed me. "Join us! Forever!" they chanted in enthusiastic unison. Panic surged anew as I turned to confront whatever awaited me, but it was there I saw her again, the woman from the shadows, now standing eerily atop the carousel, extending her hand, beckoning. "Embrace it, and you will never be alone." Before I could process the horror, the shadows surged toward me, melding into a howling mass as they consumed the light. I felt the crushing weight of despair tightening around my throat, and with a final, frantic breath, I prepared to fight against the tide of madness that threatened to drag me down into the depths. But before I could act, the ground cracked beneath me once more, swallowing the carnival into a gaping maw. With a horrifying lurch, I plummeted into the darkness again, the shrieks surrounding me, the woman's voice mingling with the chorus of the damned as everything faded into chaos. The fall felt endless, a spiraling descent through the void. As I tumbled into the abyss, the cacophony of screams faded, replaced by an eerie whisper, a choral symphony of lost souls weaving through the fabric of despair. The darkness enveloped me, pulling me deeper into an uncharted nightmare where time lost all meaning. With a sudden jolt, I crashed onto a cold, damp surface that gave way like rotten wood. My breath escaped in a ragged gasp, and I shot up, eyes wide in terror. I was in a cavernous space, dimly lit by ghostly phosphorescent fungi clinging to the dripping walls. The air was thick with the stench of decay, a rancid bouquet of earth and despair. My ears were assaulted by an unnatural silence that throbbed with an underlying pulse, as if the cavern itself were alive. Shadows lunged from the corners of my vision, too quick to grasp, leaving only the faintest trace of movement behind. I pressed my back against the rough stone, my heart racing, struggling to make sense of my surroundings. As I gathered my bearings, I noticed different passages branching out from this chamber, each beckoning with an almost insidious allure. The darkness was denser down one path, rich with whispers that teased the fringes of my mind. The second tunnel glimmered faintly, with a soft hum that soothed yet unsettled me. But it was the third passage that pulled at my instincts, a distant echo of laughter that slithered beneath my skin, promising something sinister yet enticing. I took a hesitant step towards the first, each heartbeat reverberating in my ears, the voices entwining with my thoughts, luring me in. "Help us! Help us!" they chanted, like sirens drawing a ship to its doom. I shook my head, fighting against their call, desperate not to forsake any lingering humanity, but then, the whisper of the woman resurfaced, echoing through my memory. "Embrace the darkness, you will not suffer alone." Her voice dripped with the honeyed promise of security, mingling with the horrific fascination of my own confusion, and I faltered, torn between denial and the instinctual craving for safety in numbers. Suddenly, a thunderous crash rumbled through the cavern, shaking the very ground beneath me. I spun to see a figure emerge from the depths of shadows, a man, tall and gaunt, his features obscured by the darkness that clung to him like a shroud. His silhouette flickered as though phasing in and out of existence, eyes glowing with an unsettling luminance. "Come, join us," he hissed, each word laced with the desperation of 1,000 anguished souls. His elongated fingers beckoned, twisting as if each joint were a separate appendage seeking something to grasp. "You've suffered enough. This is where you belong." My instincts screamed at me to flee, but something in his voice anchored me, a deep-rooted sorrow that resonated within the hollow chambers of my heart. Before I could turn to escape, his other hand shot forward, lunging toward me with a cast of malevolence. With a burst of adrenaline, I pivoted and bolted down the left corridor. The glowing whispers intensified, urging me deeper into the heart of the cavern. Shadows raced alongside me, clawing at my legs and pulling with a desperate force, but I drove onward, fueled by something primal, survival instinct clawing at my throat. The walls began to close in as I plunged deeper, each breath a visceral reminder of mortality. The whispered laughter now morphed into shrieks of joy twisted with anguish, a cacophony that tore at my sanity. Then, abruptly, the corridor broadened into a vast antechamber, a grotesque gallery lined with distorted mirrors that reflected not only my visage but horrid, twisted imitations of my fears and failures. My breath hitched as I faced a particular mirror at the center. It was a portal of black glass without reflection, swirling with images of the people I had lost, their faces contorted with grief, mouthing silent screams, extending their arms toward me in a continuous plea. I reached for the glass, drawn like a moth to flame, feeling the crackling pulse of their pain resonate through me. As my fingers brushed the surface, an icy shock shot up my arm, and the sound of laughter erupted from behind me, ringing like a death knell. I whirled around to see the gaunt figure and the woman now flanking me, their grins spreading across their faces like a chasm opening to swallow the light. "They wish for you to join them," the woman crooned, voice dripping with malevolence. "Do you not feel their call? Do you not wish to embrace the agony?" The walls shimmered, and I felt the very fabric of the cavern tremble as more shadows emerged from the tunnels, drawn to the mirror's allure, their hollow eyes focused on me. Panic surged anew, freezing my feet in place as the chilling realization struck me. This was the true essence of my torment, an eternal cycle of despair, always lurking, always waiting. Join us. The shadows cried in harmony, voices mingling in a torrential storm of unearthly pitch. As they lunged toward me, I snapped back to the mirror, caught in a perverse loop of longing and fear. No! I screamed, grasping the edges of sanity, yet the shadows encircled me, ready to draw me into their embrace. In desperation, I had only one option left before darkness consumed me completely. With a mighty thrust, I hurled myself at the mirror, ready to shatter its deceptive facade and either find salvation or embrace my destruction. But as the surface fractured, something indescribable howled from within. The laughter morphed into wails, the glass splintering into infinite shards that flew like knives in a storm. I felt the ethereal pull of the abyss behind me as the shadows roared, and with a final, deafening crack, I was swallowed whole into a blinding flash of light and agony, leaving me teetering on the edge of another reality. The light smothered me, a pulsing tempest that danced with the echoes of anguish and lingering dread. As it engulfed my senses, a distorted kaleidoscope of colors flickered and twisted around me. Each hue pulled at my skin, chilling me to the core, until the splendor dissolved into an unsettling twilight. I landed gracelessly on what seemed to be the underbelly of a vast, twisted forest. Gnarled trees towered overhead, their branches extending like skeletal hands searching for something lost. The trunks, warped and pulsating, shimmered with an iridescent sheen as though they were made from a creeping darkness that absorbed the world around them. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, every inhalation felt like breathing in the remnants of countless lives extinguished. In the distance, I heard the soft trickle of water, an inviting sound that stirred something weary within me. I stumbled forward, guided by a strange compulsion to seek refuge. As I moved, whispers drifted lazily through the mist, curling around my mind like tendrils of smoke. "Stay with us," they coaxed. "You are not alone." Shaking my head, I clenched my fists, forcing myself to tune them out despite their haunting familiarity. These were not the whispers of the lost faces reflected in the mirror, they were different, more amorphous, wrapping themselves around me, promising to mend the fractures of my soul. The trees sighed, nodding gently as if agreeing with the phantoms. Then, a noise shattered the silence, a low growl reverberated through the ground, resonating within my bones. I froze, heart hammering in my chest. The earth trembled beneath me, and shadows converged from all directions, forming a dark mass that surged like a storm cloud. Instinct kicked in, propelling me forward once more. I sprinted toward the sound of water, desperate for solace, for clarity. The shadows hot on my heels transformed into indistinct shapes, sinuous movements filled with malice as they intertwined, whispering secrets I was too afraid to comprehend. "You belong with us," they sang in sinister chorus, the tone dripping with sweetness that mimicked deceit. I burst into a clearing awash in moonlight, where a crystalline stream wound its way like a silver ribbon through the jagged landscape. Kneeling, I splashed the cool water against my face, desperately trying to drown out the hysteria that clawed at my mind. Reflections danced upon the surface, shimmering with fleeting images, figures from the past, their eyes dim yet pleading. I turned away quickly, forcing myself to breathe, to remember who I was, but the whispers grew sharper, angrier. "You denied us," they shrieked. "You defied what you need. Accept us. Free yourself." Suddenly, from the depths of the trees, a figure emerged, a creature formed by shadows and despair, its figure constantly writhing. Twisted limbs elongated, knotted and barbed, glistening with a substance that caught the moonlight like blood. Its face was a contorted mask of grief, an amalgamation of lost souls echoing back my fears. No longer human, it resembled a thing of pure anguish, every scream etched into its visage, every tear a dark glimmer in its hollow eyes. Horror surged through me as I realized it was not just a creature, it was a manifestation of my past, my regrets, my failures, everything buried deep within. "Join us," it croaked, anguish infused with fury. "You have nowhere to run." I backed away, adrenaline surging like wildfire as it advanced, shadows swirling at its feet, drawing nearer. My pulse roared within my ears, the shadows whispering sweet promises of freedom, persuading me to lay down my fight. Embrace the fear, they cooed. It is all that will remain. As the grotesque being lunged forward, tendrils of darkness escaping its form and reaching for me, I did the only thing my instincts urged, I turned to flee. The moon bathed the clearing in a silver glow as the night echoed with my desperate cries, the sinuous tendrils reaching closer, my feet pounding against the earth in a sickening rhythm of survival, but with every step, I felt the shadows extend, grappling around my ankles, pulling me into the depths of their soulless embrace. I stumbled, clawing at the ground, but their grip was vice-like. The moonlight seemed to dim as if the world were stretching tight, teetering on the brink of oblivion. Just as I felt the last vestiges of light slipping away, a thunderous roar split the night, echoing through the trees and freezing me in place. The air crackled, heavy with tension and unasked questions. Something far more primal, more ancient than the shadows stirred within the forest depths, and then, through the sea of darkness, an immense, luminous figure broke free, a silhouette rife with power, glowing with an intensity that pushed back the encroaching shadows. It bore wings like thunderclouds, and as it unfurled them, the world erupted in blinding light, the shadows recoiled, then inhaled deeply, merging into the figure as if surrendering to its brilliance. But as the light spread, illuminating the twisted trees and the tormented being still grasping in hungry desperation, I caught a glimpse of what lay within its depths, an endless void that mirrored back my own fears. "Run!" the figure proclaimed, its voice a blend of thunder and ethereal whisper, beckoning me from the edge of darkness toward the unknown. In that pivotal moment, I stood at an unbearable crossroads, to flee and embrace my uncertainty or confront the horrors unleashed upon me. But as I turned to escape, the shadows surged back, coiling fiercely around my limbs, pulling me toward the crystalline stream, and there at the water's edge I spotted an image staring back through the rippling surface, a face once familiar yet entirely foreign. My own reflection smiled back, and with eyes shrouded in darkness whispering, "You were never meant to leave." I was entrapped in the grip of a decision that would shatter everything I thought I knew. The moment was electrified with an inexplicable pull, anchoring me before the water's edge where the shadows writhed and surged like churning ocean waves. The smiling visage peering through the depths twisted in mockery as the water shimmered with its tantalizing illusion of safety. Desperation clawed at my throat. The cacophony of words both encouraging and threatening swirled in my mind, drowning out any rational thought that I could feel the breath of the creature at my back, its existence a grotesque shadow behind me, hurling memories of past mistakes, heartaches, and lost people whose lives I had recklessly disregarded. In the faint moonlight, it loomed larger, its form expanding with malevolence as it drew near. The whispers had evolved, transformed from seductive coos into a tortured choir of mourning souls. "Join us, embrace us," they pleaded in unison, their voices rising and falling in sorrowful rhythm. The reflection did not retreat, it remained steadfast, eyes gleaming with hunger. I could see the mouth beginning to move, forming words just beneath the surface. "You cannot escape your fate," it said. "You have waited too long to confront what lies within." Another fierce pull from the shadows yanked me closer to the water, the darkness clawing stubbornly at my flesh, urging me to surrender. Yet, something about the imposing figure of light behind me sent forth a flicker of hope. But that flicker dwindled as the creature's growl reverberated through the air, a sound like 1,000 broken hearts shattering all at once. With a savage twist of will, I tore my gaze from the deceptive depths and faced the glowing apparition. "What do I do?" I cried, desperation spilling forth. My voice trembled, riding the edge of a precipice I had long avoided. "Help me." The creature's wings surged forth, wrapping around me in ripples of luminescent energy. "Accept your truth," it thundered, resonating through the very marrow of my being. "Your light is your chain, only by facing the dark can you truly be free." Nothing made sense. I had tried to run from my past, locked it away behind a door marked "Do Not Enter." With the shadows tightening like a noose, I felt every regret surface as memories morphed into phantoms, each one a weight dragging me to the depths. My heart hammered against my chest, an urgent rhythm of fear and rebellion against being swept away. The shadowy figure thrummed with indignation behind me as it lunged, tendrils snaking forward. "No! You shall not escape!" It bellowed, and I felt its breath, fetid and reeking of despair, a storm front threatening to envelop me whole. I knew what lay beneath the water's glossy veneer, the truth I had buried deep inside. That I had sworn to forget who I was, to erase names and truths that once defined me. In that moment of primal instinct, I was ripped between survival and surrender. As I wrestled with the decision, the luminous figure surged, a beacon of ethereal hope. "You must trust yourself," it commanded, and the shadows recoiled, sensing the upheaval within me. Summoning every ounce of courage, I turned my focus away from the beckoning whispers and the overwhelming pull of darkness. I summoned the strength to face my own reflection. "I can't let you take me," I shouted, my voice raw with determination, but the shadows twisted in response, swirling around my ankles, whispering venomously, "You shall not deny your true self. Not here, not ever." With an involuntary cry, I plunged my hands into the crystalline stream, feeling the cold embrace of water seep into my very essence. My reflection writhed, distorting as the light from the figure broke through, illuminating the dark coiling forms that continued their relentless advance. They surged, clenching around my wrists like a vice, suffocating all hope and sanity, and then, in a violent clash of will against despair, the raw energy of the figure behind me surged forward, pushing light into the depths, sweeping away the shadows that dared to cling to my skin. Suddenly, the water surged upward in a powerful geyser, spilling forth dazzling brightness. I barely registered the sudden change as the figure was pulled into the maelstrom, the luminescence intertwining with the dark, a cataclysmic union of light and shadow culminating as they wrestled in a dance of power. In the ensuing chaos, I felt weightlessness, as if I had been released from an invisible chain, yet the shadows pulled with renewed fervor. They began weaving into the water, dancing with my spirit, captivating me with promises of acceptance. "Join us," they sang, sweetness laced with poison, and amidst all of this, I saw a shadow beyond the fray, rising from the stream, my sister, taken too soon by an unforgiving world. Her presence filled the air with bittersweet nostalgia, an invitation masked by grief. "You have the power," she whispered, her voice breaking through the chaos. "Find it and you shall be reborn." As horror clashed with yearning, and with pulling shadows threatening to drown me in despair, I heard one last piercing cry echo throughout the forest and felt an enormous wave of darkness wash over me, dragging me under. In that moment, just as I thought all hope was lost, another face emerged from the depths, eyes wide with revelation, and a twisted smile curling into place. It was me, an alternate reality, a soulless likeness of who I once was, staring back with all the haunting truths I had tried to bury. And with a glint of malevolent glee, it whispered, "You were never meant to fight." The world around me began to collapse, shadows spiraling together as the surface of the water turned to glass, reflecting my soul, my battle. And as panic surged, I realized that leaving this place meant confronting the truth I had long fled from, yet right then, the shadows enveloped me, pulling me deep below the surface, and everything erupted into darkness. It was cold in the depths that swallowed me whole. The water that had once felt like a barrier became an oppressive shroud, wrapping me in silence and despair. Visions flickered around me, remnants of my life playing like ghosts through the glassy veil, fearful glances of those I had betrayed, my sister's warm laughter morphing into mournful wails, fading into echoes that made the darkness feel alive. Even the shadows that dragged me down seemed to pulse with their own dread, thick tendrils stretching like skeletal fingers around my limbs. A quiet surrender began to fill the void of panic, guilt mingling with resignation as I sunk deeper into the abyss. But it was there, below the surface, a murmur snaking through the inky waters. "You cannot let them win," it intoned, a voice not entirely unfamiliar, yet distorted, causing my heart to lurch. An idle flicker of hope sparked at the core of my fear. Perhaps it was the luminescent figure that urged me to fight, its essence intermingling with my own. Desperation scratched at my mind, and I clawed through the water, but the shadows tightened around me, forming a cocoon of treachery, whispering sweet sins into my ear. "You are where you belong. This is the truth that was always meant to be yours." The darkness teased at my senses. Shadows of forgotten faces wove around me, past versions of myself. Each fragment seeped into my consciousness, each a piece of my fractured identity. One shimmered with the light of my childhood dreams, while another hissed reminders of mistakes long ignored. They beckoned me to give in, to join their realm of hallucinations, where I would no longer need to fight. Just as despair threatened to consume me, I felt a sudden lurching in the depths, as if the water itself began to churn. My body reacted instinctively, a visceral urge to claw upward, to escape this nightmare. I writhed futilely, aware the surface was distances away, the pressure of the darkness pressing in around me like a vice. Trust yourself, the words flashed through my mind like a lifeline, cutting through the tumult. With a surge of defiance, I wrapped my fingers around something solid, a rock or perhaps a remnant of consciousness, and pushed against the shadows entrapping me. The moment I summoned my will, the grip around my throat loosened, releasing a rasping breath. Panic mingled with exhilaration, reminding me I was still alive, but the shadows swelled with fury, coiling and writhing like living nightmares. You cannot escape that which you are, they hissed, a cacophony of voices spiraling into a frenzy. The darkness morphed and coalesced into shapes, grotesque figures slithering from the depths. They were twisted versions of people I used to know, my old friends, distorted around agonizing truths, their faces blurred into nightmarish smirks that I could hear the roar of their laughter, hollow and chilling, as they closed in around me. Join us, they coaxed, their limbs extending like vines, penetrating my mind, peeling back layers of denial. Remember what lied in your heart. We are all one and the same. Then, from the maelstrom emerged glimpses of the luminescent figure, the beacon of hope that had surged forth before. But now, it was flickering, fighting against the darkness that sought to extinguish it. I forced my gaze to unite with its radiance, willing every particle of my being to reject the phantoms that clawed at my essence. Agonizing screams erupted, the voices raw and filled with despair. You will never be free. They echoed, blending into a haunting melody that reverberated in the water, drumming against my skull with sorrow that threatened to overwhelm me. But within that agony, a sudden clarity blossomed. I cried out, I will not let you have me. The declaration startled even the shadows, causing them to recoil as if struck. Summoning every last shred of defiance, I flung my arms forward, pushing against the weight of the consuming darkness, feeling the light within me blazing brighter. In response, the abyss trembled. I could sense the surface above, a glimmer of possibility just out of reach, shimmering with the resonance of light and hope. Desperation surged again, and I kicked through the darkness, reaching toward the distant glow. As I surged toward the surface, a pressure enveloped my body, like a compulsion seeking to pull me back. With every stroke, shadows lashed out, furious claws scraping against my skin, dragging me downward. You are ours. They screeched, their anger boiling the water like molten rage. My lungs burned, begging for air, but I wouldn't relent. My reflection flickered again in the darkness. The twisted version smiled back, her eyes gleaming with a cruelty that made my skin crawl. You think you can escape? She taunted, her voice a cruel melody. You are forever tied to me. Just as my fingertips brushed the surface and frigid water crackled around me, I caught a glimpse of my sister's face again, distorted not by time but by sorrow. With a cry that transcended the depths, she reached for me, but the shadows surged forward, wrenching her back, molding her into a grotesque form, a composite of shadows and anger. Your past will haunt you. You cannot leave it behind, she rasped in the dark, her face flickering between haunting love and ghastly rage. In one final moment of insight, I was torn between the shards of my reality, the drowning whispers of regrets and losses, and the agonizing truth that shadows could not define my identity. But just as clarity washed over me, an unseen force pulled me back, dragging me under, and with one last gasp for air, I surrendered to the depths, the surface fading into a glimmering memory. And when I felt it, a hand at my ankle, a grip tighter than the shadows, pulling me down deeper still, under a crushing weight which whispered only one phrase, you have nowhere to run. Then darkness enveloped my thoughts, and the shadows surged once more, swallowing up all light, leaving behind a wisp of my sanity, the haunting remnants of the past that wouldn't allow me to escape the horrors waiting below the surface. I awoke, gasping, but not in the velvet hush of water. The air was sharp and biting, laced with an acrid scent that settled rancid on my tongue. Panic swelled as I opened my eyes to complete darkness. No walls, no ceiling, only an abyss wrapping around me, suffocating in its void. My heart pounded in my ears, a desperate drumbeat echoing against the walls of my mind, compelling me to push beyond the limits of my dread. That I clawed at the ground beneath me, expecting the cool caress of soil or grass, but met instead a surface that felt too smooth, cold, and unyielding. A gust of wind snaked through the sprawl, whispering secrets I couldn't catch, sending shivers down my spine. Where am I? The thought blasted through the fog, but the darkness around me offered no answers, only echoes of my own voice, swallowed into nothingness. With trembling fingers, I searched wildly, feeling for boundaries, but found nothing. Each motion amplified my sense of entrapment. Reality warped around me in the pitch black, shapes seemed to swirl, manifesting in my peripheral vision, fleeting and cruel, a child's laughter circling my head like a mockingbird, echoing from a place I couldn't reach. Suddenly, a shrill cry sliced through the blackness, piercing my depths of despair. Help! Help me! It was unmistakable. I recognized the shimmer of that voice. It was my sister, the one echo of light I had held onto, lost and fractured in the dark. Is it really you? I gasped, squinting through the black mist that clung to every breath. My heart raced, blood thundering in my ears as her voice fractured into a chorus, blending with the echoes of those I had left behind, the friends whose faces twisted into sin, specters of loss draped in torment. Where are you? I screamed, desperation leaking into my plea. Please, I need you. The laughter swelled again, not her voice but an ominous reverberation, pale and chilling. You are not worthy to find her, it taunted, voices knitting together, crafting a tapestry of taunts that wound tightly around my throat. They whispered my name, each inflection laced with accusation, but beyond the chaos, a pulse of light flared in my mind, a small ember igniting in response to darkness. I will find you. I vowed, the sound of my own determination shocking me back into focus. With a newfound strength, I stumbled forward, though what lay before me was still a vast chasm. My heart clenched as I stumbled over an unseen edge, nearly tumbling into oblivion. Instead, I glimpsed a shadow slinking away, tauntingly familiar, and in that moment, recognition struck. It was her shape, just out of reach, unnaturally obscured. Don't run! I screamed, chasing after her silhouette. My legs surged beneath me, propelled by a will to unite with the only remnant of hope I had left. The air thickened, wrapping tight around my throat as if the darkness itself conspired to drag me back. Macabre whispers surrounded me, again urging me to surrender. You are fools, forever caught within the cycle of your own despair. I stumbled, grappling with obsidian tendrils that snared my ankles like a predator's embrace. How many times had I promised to protect her, and yet here I was, battling the shadows, the gaping maw of guilt that had seeped into my bones. I could still hear her faint cries, muddled in the chaotic pool of sound, a plea that entwined with a menacing echo, you mustn't trust them. I lunged forward, desperate to reach her. Hold on! I cried, the shadows thickening like fog, swirling around my waist. Just as I caught another glimpse of her shimmer through the fracture of darkness, she turned. Her face, what once was a mischievous smile, was now an expression contorted with fear and something deeper, something twisted, betrayal. You think you can save me? She shouted, her voice a torrent of pain. But it was the eyes that struck fear into my heart. They mirrored the abyss I had escaped from, now revealing the depths of torment that cloaked my existence. In that fleeting moment, the understanding came crashing down like an avalanche. Her shape was a mirror, a fractured reflection of the very shadows I had fought. With horror coursing through my very veins, I stumbled back, confusion locking my limbs in place. No, this can't be, not you. You were my light. The shadows wrapped tighter, beginning to constrict my breath once more, but I resisted, fighting against the truth that threatened to engulf me. Your light? She echoed with growing certainty, dripping with malice. Then she whispered, a note of temptation tracing her voice, shall I show you what lies beneath? Before I could respond, the ground beneath me gave way, shuddering into a gaping maw, a dark void that threatened to consume everything I held dear. I flailed, fear gripping my heart as I fell, cascading through layers of darkness, deeper, deeper still, the horrified visage of my sister fading, morphing into the shadows that swirled in pursuit. As the air rushed past me, suffocating and cold, a voice echoed in the void, resonating with the certainty of an eternal curse. You can never escape the truth of what you are. Then I plummeted, body rotating through darkness as I screamed an unending descent into terror, a desire to find light fracturing against the depths from which I had just emerged. And in the last instant, amidst the chaos, I glimpsed a single pale hand reaching out from below, beckoning me into the abyss. Come home. And with that, the darkness wrapped around me once more, swallowing the last vestige of hope, leaving only silence, waiting to reveal the horrors that lay within. I never should have opened that door. The moment I stepped through, the breathing world of the forest dissipated behind me like vapor, leaving me cold and shivering in a void that felt ancient and raw. The door closed behind me with a sharp click, sealing me into darkness. The air was thick, saturated with a profound slumber like a fog hovering over a graveyard. I struggled to breathe. I should have listened. The whispers had warned me, but curiosity, that insidious worm, had crawled its way into my mind, and here I stood, confronting the darkness left in Jacob's wake. No longer the mountain trail I had hiked countless times. I wandered within cold stone walls lined with sinister carvings, figures contorted in agony, their mouths wide in silent screams. The darkness pulsed with a life of its own, hungry tendrils scratching at the very edge of my sanity. Then I heard a soft, stifled sobbing coming from deeper within. The echoes resonated in my ears, pulling on long-buried emotions, dredging up names I thought I had forgotten. I tread slowly, my breath becoming shallow, echoing softly in the cold chamber. Help us, the voices resonated, hollow and desperate. That I followed the sound until I stumbled upon a lit room, the flickering flames of a fire illuminating the ghostly figures trapped against the walls. Lost souls, strangers contorted in anguish. One turned to me, a woman with wild hair and gaping eyes that shook in despair. She lifted a hand, her skeletal fingers clutching at the shadows. You must free us. You hold the key. Panic clawed its way into my throat, suffocating thoughts of escape. But how? What do you want from me? I cried, desperation curling like smoke through my lungs. The woman's mouth twisted into a horrible smile, her voice rasping with the weight of the lost. Unseal Jacob's legacy. Embrace the darkness and you will find what you seek. Before I could comprehend the meaning, she wailed, her shape flickering, and in the next instant, vanished into despair. That I wanted to flee, to turn back to the door I had recklessly closed, but it was as if the darkness itself had conspired against me, weaving my very essence into its web of treachery. The flames in the room danced, and against my will I surged forward, drawn to the ancient writings upon the walls, begging for deciphering. The symbols twisted and turned, whispers merging into sinister laughter, promising power, unveiling the dark inheritance of Jacob's door. Memories of darkness intertwined with haunting visions, each igniting an echo of pain. What cost was needed to seal the fate of the damned? What sacrifice would be required of me? Then I saw it, a mirror nestled among the shadows, its surface gleaming with an otherworldly light. I stepped forward, reaching toward the glass, curiously transfixed by the potential of its secrets. An omnipresent force enveloped me, beckoning me toward an unthinkable awakening. I could almost taste freedom, a promise, woven into the very fabric of my being. Reaching for the mirror's edge, I thought of the lives I had lost, the echoes of guilt that relentlessly haunted me. Suddenly, the laughter surged again, echoing through the chamber until it morphed, changing into wails, agonized cries surrounding me from all sides. Help us! Help us! They rose, drowning out my thoughts and twisting them, morphing into a torrent of despair that solidified into shape. Shadowy figures began to form, stepping from the edges of the darkness, their faces barely visible, yet their intent was clear. I stumbled back, panic seizing me once more as the glass cracked under my fingers. The mirror flickered, revealing fragmented reflections of my past, bits of my soul lost among the troubled glimmers, the faces of those I had loved. You were never meant to leave. Their hollow whispers echoed, forever entwined in the murk of my conscience that I shrieked, spinning around, desperate to escape but finding my way blocked. The shadowy figures seized me with their whispering arms, dragging me toward the mirror again. "Accept us!" they screamed, voices blending into a cacophony. That drove spikes through my mind. No! But their strength was overwhelming, drowning my cries beneath their encroaching sorrow. Then, out of the chaos, came that woman again, now towering amidst the shadows, her eyes burning with triumph. "You see? You cannot escape the legacy." She stretched reptilian tendrils toward me. "You are part of it now." A sudden flash of clarity hit me. Jacob's door. I recalled the legend whispering through the village, tales of those who entered never returning home unchanged. I realized in that instant I was transgressing their realms, disturbed their slumber, and I had given them unwitting freedom, but I also held the power to end this. The belief surged within me, solidifying into something fierce that transcended the anguish of the lost. My former self emerged as I remembered my own worth. The sacrifices that demanded my existence could be overthrown. No! I roared, breaking free from their clutches, the burning light filling my being. I ran towards the mirror, dodging tendrils snaking in my direction. Adrenaline coursed through me as I shouted, "I reject this. I reject you." With each word, I pushed against the dark presence, forcing the energy back, feeling my will carve through the shadows like a weapon. The laughter dissipated, fractured by my declaration. I grasped the edges of the mirror, feeling the power surge, an eruption of vestibule energy, spiraling around and wrapping around me like a roaring fire. A scream exploded from within the darkness. An unearthly wail shrieked in torment. The shadows reeled at my defiance. "Let go!" I bellowed. "I will break this curse." The tears of the figures behind me began to reveal glimpses of the light, their pain lifting momentarily, illuminating their forgotten humanity. They wailed in agony as I shattered the mirror's surface, light washing over me, as the fabric of darkness began to unravel. But then the ground trembled violently beneath me. A sinking realization crashed inside as the very foundation gave away. The shadowy figures lunged, desperation etched across their faces and claws outstretched, as they swept forward like a relentless storm. No! The walls crumbled, pulling everything into oblivion. My scream echoed, choked by the dark veil encroaching. "You'll never be free." But amidst that chaos, the final truth hit me: the souls were free, released by my breaking of Jacob's curse. Yet as I was engulfed in their uproar, I felt the chilling touch of the darkness wrap around me again. This was not the end, their suffering still lingered, and then I felt a sharp chill stab into my heart as I was pulled into an abyss of sensations. The screams quieted, lulled by a predatory silence, leaving fragmentations of despair surrounding me. As darkness seeped into my consciousness, I whispered into the void, "You'll never be free." And somewhere, beyond the shadows, I knew not everything has been resolved. Darkness lingers, waiting for the next curious soul willing to open that door.